Okay.
Okay, good morning, good Erev Shabbos, everyone. I want to try something a little bit different and try to engage in some deeper thought about things that come up in the Parsha and elsewhere. Start out talking about angels. Abraham saw angels, the Avos saw angels. Throughout Tanakh, we find malachim. I'd like to define what an angel is. Just take a look at how various Mefarshim have looked upon angels. Angels, and on the other side, demons, Shadim, occupy a great deal of literature, but most of it is in the philosophical realm, and that's not an area that too many people spend time in. We talk about angels, we talk about Shadim, but we don't really have a full understanding of what they are. That being said, the Gemara does tell us, and you have it in Pirkei Avos as well, that there are certain things perhaps that we ought not to investigate. There are certain things that, as the American humorist James Thurber observed, there are things that go bump in the night that may scare us, things that we don't understand, and perhaps they're better left not being understood. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time. So I've always been fascinated by the whole notion of angels and definitions of angels, and I've been guided myself by the Rambam's understanding of what angels are. So in order to understand what an angel is, we have to understand what God is. And it's very hard to define God. We know about negative attributes of what God isn't, but I think, personally, I like the Rambam's definition. Put it in simple terms, and by the way, the Rambam, as a great halachist, wrote many, many works on philosophy and theology that most people don't even study. Moreh Nevuchim was a very difficult book when it first came out. And in fact, it was burned by the rabbis of southern France because it was deemed to be heretical, because Rambam, being an Aristotelian, introduced a lot of concepts that a lot of people didn't like or didn't understand. But as he defines God, I think it makes sense. God is an active, intelligent force at work in the universe. Like you have gravity, for example. That's a force. But gravity is not an intelligent force. God is an active, intelligent force involved in the world. An angel, however, is a force at work in nature, like the wind, like gravity, but it's not an independently intelligent force. An angel, the word malach really means messenger. And a malach is an intelligent force that is created by God to fulfill a specific purpose. If we can understand and wrap our heads around that, then perhaps we get a bit of an understanding of the angels who appeared to Abraham. Yaakov wrestled with an angel. An angel appeared to Moshe at the burning bush. What were these apparitions, if you will, or these agents of God? And the Gemara in Chagiga has a very long definition, and there are 9 characteristics of angels, if we can understand what an angel is. Angels have wings. That's true. They can fly to the ends of the earth. They also know what's going to happen in the future. They can hear me'achori apargo. They have access behind the curtain, so to speak. Angels do not eat. Now, how did the angels eat when they came to Abraham? Interesting question. The Mefarshim deal with that. They don't eat. They can't procreate. They don't die. They are eternal. They do have knowledge, and they can walk upright, and they speak Hebrew. Those are the 9 characteristics of an angel. And again, the Rambam describes them in philosophical terms. They don't necessarily have a physical presence unless that's part of their task. Uh, the Rambam had a little difficult with the Gemara because if angels are weightless, how do they have wings? And again, that's a philosophical discussion. They have different names. There are different levels. You have Ophanim, you have Chayos. There are many different, and we say it in Adav, Ophanim v'Chayos HaKodesh. These are two categories of angels that praise God every day. But there are many other categories and subcategories of angels. But they basically are messengers created to carry out the will of God. And they can't make decisions on their own. They're basically told what to do. They are active intelligences at work in the universe, but they're directed by God. And whenever we see an angel, or whether the Tanakh talks about and the appearance of an angel, it's not a physical appearance, but rather a vision, a dream, or what have you. But they don't have any physical characteristics in that regard. Okay. They represent God. Rav Yosef Albo, another great Jewish philosopher, talks about how they appear or they don't appear, what the nature of the vision is. When the three angels appeared to Avraham, according to some Mefarshim, they appeared as part of a nevuah, part of his prophecy, and he envisioned that he saw them. He envisioned that he saw them eating. I mean, it was apparently maybe it was Pesach, whatever. And the issue of eating milk and suflashiks, that's a separate discussion all by itself. But not everybody agrees with the Rambam. And that's why he was so controversial. If the Rambam says that malachim do not have a physical appearance, then how do people see them? How do they talk to them, and so forth and so on? The people that appeared to Avraham and later on to Lot, according to the Ralbag, were actually Nevi'im. They're called malachim when they give their specific message to Avraham or to Lot. Avraham does not call them malachim. They're not called out by name. They're only told, they're called malachim by Lot only because he was being told by a Navi how to behave, what to do. They weren't just giving him a message. So again, there's a lot of philosophical stuff here. But basically, angels are not necessarily physical beings. They are existential beings. If I can use that Aristotelian expression. And Yehuda Halevi, another great Jewish philosopher, talks about the fact that this is what an angel is. It's not necessarily a physical being, although there are certain angels that are physical. And there are machloksim among the Rishonim as to how it. Sometimes they are visible, sometimes they're not visible. These are areas that are not just a question of philosophy, but also gets involved in theology. And it gets very, very rarefied in this discussion. Why Avraham has such a detailed vision as opposed to other people in Tanakh, maybe on a higher level, perhaps. A lot of commonality between prophecy and the ability to see angels. If an angel is a type of a Navi, did they see the angels physically or was it in a dream? But angels, for all intents and purposes, in Tanakh, there were malachim. Are there still malachim around today? Probably yes, but we don't see them. What one person might call an angel, somebody else might call a coincidence or an event that happens or an individual that happened to pass by. These are things that we cannot define in specific characteristics, because what the Gemara describes as a malach may not be something that we can comprehend. We are not on that level of the nevuah, perhaps. And you have to be on a certain level to see a malach. It's just the same thing that all the Nevi'im in Tanakh, communicated with Hashem through a dream, a vision. Even Avram Avinu, the only person who actually communicated face to face with God was Moshe Rabbeinu. Everything else was through a nevuah or through a dream, and perhaps malachim also function in that same way. That a person might be in a hypnotic trance and they think they're seeing something, and it's just a message from God. How does God communicate to us today? To those to whom God communicates, you have to be a special person, or can God communicate to everybody? Or some people might call coincidence. Jewish philosophy is not for everybody. I'm just really skimming the surface. The Rambam, in his introduction to Moreh Nevuchim, is a very interesting parable. And he explains, he says that when a baby is born, you don't give a baby steak and potatoes for his first meal. For a long time, a baby is given his mother's milk because the baby's digestive system, cannot handle anything but the simplest nutrients. Eventually, you start feeding him cream food and cereals, and eventually vegetables, and eventually, as you get more developed, as your digestive. So the same thing is true in Jewish philosophy. You begin feeding to people in small amounts, and as a person becomes more and more sophisticated, you may increase it. It's not for everybody. You can live a very successful life without engaging in Jewish philosophy. Most of the Jewish world does. Excuse me. Most of the Jewish world goes about their lives observing mitzvos, not necessarily engaging in the deeper philosophical understandings of Judaism, essence of God, and so forth, and including the existence of angels and how we understand the role of angels in Jewish life. It's an area of Jewish philosophy that may be of interest to some people, may not be, but in any case, the Gemara tells us that there are certain things that are not for everybody to understand. Sure, the Chumash tells us about Abraham was visited by 3 angels, and Lot was visited by 2 angels. And then the story goes on. But to take the time to understand what was the essence of these angels, who are the angels, what is an angel, most people kind of skip over that and go to the more basic stuff, which perhaps is as it should be. The Gemara in the Chagiga, which talks about a lot of this stuff, tells us the very famous story about Rabbi Akiva, Ben Azai, Rabbi Akiva, Ben Azai, who else was it? 2 other, I forget. There were 4 Chachamim. Ben Zoma was the 3rd, and Elisha ben Avuya was the 4th. There were 4 Tanoim who engaged in philosophical and theological speculation. And they were studying topics that the average person does not investigate. And when they try to understand the essence of God, they try to understand evil and good, all the different issues that engage Jewish philosophers and theologians. One of them committed suicide. It was too much for him. He couldn't handle it. He's a great Tanoim. One became a heretic, Elisha ben Avuya. He's still quoted, but they quote him as Acher, the other one. He's a Rebbe of Meir. So one went crazy, one committed suicide, one left Judaism altogether, and only one, Rabbi Akiva Yasa Sholem. He was the only one because he was firmly grounded in basic halacha and Talmud and so forth. So the message that the Gemara is telling us is that it's not for everybody. It's not for everyone. You can live a very fine life without it, but it's there to be investigated. The Moreh Nevuchim is available in English. It was originally written in Arabic. It was translated into Hebrew. And one of the most amazing things about the Rambam's works, he is admired and he is reviled at the same time by different parts of the rabbinic community. Admired for his halachic positions, and reviled for some of his philosophic positions, which might be Aristotelian in origin. The Rambam lived in the 12th century. Printing press had not yet been invented. Yet before he died in 1204, his works were known all over the Jewish world. Think about that for a moment. There were people who were spending vast sums of money to slaughter sheep, prepare the skins, hire a scribe, and copy voluminous amounts of pages, because that's how important his work is. Again, you have the Rambam and you have Maimonides. In every yeshiva in the world, they study Rambam. There are very few places where they study Maimonides. In a graduate course of philosophy, they might study Maimonides. Maimonides and Rambam are really the same person. Not everybody can understand that or appreciate that. Rav Yaakov Emden wrote that they were two different people. They weren't the same person. How could the Rambam have written Mor Nevuchim? Must be somebody else. It wasn't the same person, but you could have a tremendous capacity to understand halacha and that which goes above halacha. Enough. We can spend more time on this, and perhaps and you can read, by the way, in Mishnah Torah, which is halachic work. He has a few chapters called Yesodei HaTorah, and it's very philosophical. Where he describes a little bit about angels and a little about the how do you define God, essence of God's characteristics, and that's in his halachic work, not in his philosophical work. Fascinating stuff. Now, the flip side of angels, and they're out there. We don't always see them, and we're not always in that madrega to see them. The other side of angels are shadim. Shadim, sometimes translated as demons. They're the exact opposite of angels. Most shadim are negative influences, and they're similar to angels. I mean, they have wings. They can fly, they know the future, they eat and drink, unlike angels. They can procreate, and they do die. So they have certain things in common, but they're not the same. And the Gemara says most people are unable to observe these mazikim, these shadim, because if we did, we wouldn't be able to survive. They're all over the place. Whereas malachim, angels, are specifically designated for, and malach can only do one job at a time. God says that malach for a specific purpose. Shadim are all over the place. There are millions of them. And if we could see them, we probably couldn't handle it. Clearly, it's a supernatural influence. The Rambam, unlike almost everybody else, although he accepts the existence of angels, he denies the existence of demons. He says that's superstition, it doesn't exist. And he's the only one that says that. And the question is raised, how come, if the Gemara talks about the existence of demons, of shadim, then how can the Rambam say they don't exist anymore? And the answer that is sometimes given, perhaps jokingly, is that at the time of the Gemara, they existed. And by the time the Rambam came around, they didn't exist anymore. But clearly, he doesn't believe in shadim. And the Vilna Gaon accused him of being influenced by the Greek philosophers, which he was. But whether that affected him to the point, well, he said that shadim don't exist, put it that way. But according to everybody else, they do exist. And the Gemara gives many examples. Shadim forcing people to do certain things. Now, shadim is not the same as kishuf. Kishuf or magic or divination is a different category. The poskim, however, ask a following question: are you allowed to consult shadim for a question? If you have an issue, can you consult a demon? And it's a halakhic shaila. The Ramban, who was a bit of a mystic, says people consult shadim all the time, and it's not considered tishuf, not considered black magic. The Gemara has a fascinating discussion. Somebody falls into a pit, and while he's down there, he says, "Please write a get from my wife." So the Gemara asks the question: how do we know that this guy who we can't see, he fell into a deep pit? Maybe it's the voice of a shade. How do you know it's him saying, "Write my wife a get"? And the Gemara answers, it's not a shade if we can see the guy's shadow, because shadim don't leave shadows. So they took it very, very seriously. They took it very, very seriously. Again, the Rambam just says the whole thing it doesn't exist. The Meiri on this Gemara says, even though he's very sympathetic to the Rambam's point of view, he says we have to verify that the voice is not a hallucination, that it's really the voice of a person. The Shulchan Aruch, however, codifies this as a halacha, that we are concerned that if a guy is in a pit and you can't see him, that the voice might be that of a shade, and you don't rely on it. So they took this obviously very, very seriously. There's another halachic shaila that comes up, and these are serious people. They're not fooling around. What if a married woman has an affair with a shade, with a demon? Is she prohibited to her husband? And normally, if a woman has an affair, she can't live with her husband anymore. But many poskim hold that if she has an affair with a shade, then she can continue living with her husband. So obviously, this was a belief that was strongly held in a halachic framework. A woman claimed that she was raped by a shade. Is she believed or not? I mean, they take these questions seriously. Let's jump ahead to the 20th century. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, who the Gadol Hador, before Rav Moshe appeared on the scene, and he says we don't see shadim anymore because shadim only exists as a counterbalance to the positive forces in the universe. Today, we don't have Nevuah, we don't have Ruach HaKodesh, and therefore, the negative forces that are needed to counterbalance them don't exist anymore. Because there has to be balance in the world. The world is like a balance beam. And if there's you don't have Ruach HaKodesh and you don't have Nevuah, then we have to say that shadim don't exist anymore. Otherwise, it would turn the whole balance in the wrong direction. So all these things, we have Jewish folklore, and we know about them. Everybody remembers the stories and the fiddler on the roof type of things and dreams and so forth and so on. The existence of malachim, the existence of shadim is taken as a reality. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, Rav Soloveitchik's brother, suggests that when the Gemara talks about shadim, mazikim, ruach ra, all the negative forces that we don't see that exist in the universe, he says we have to look at it in a different approach. He says we know now about germs. We know about hallucinations. We know about psychosis. There are thousands of mazikim all around us. And that's why shadim, evil demons, cause us to do certain things against our will or things that we wouldn't normally do. And he says all these evil impulses are what the shadim are. We don't see them. We can't touch them. We know they're real. A person who is having a psychological issue is very real for that person. Whether it's multiple personalities or it's some kind of psychosis or hallucination, for that person, it's very, very real. Maybe, according to Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, that's what we're talking about when we talk about shadim, or even malachim, for that matter. So that not everything, just because we can't see or touch it or feel it, doesn't mean it's not real. So our understanding of angels and our understanding of demons, I think, should be put in that perspective. They're out there. Whether we call it an angel or a demon or a hallucination or a shade or a feeling, whatever you want to call it, there are things that we cannot see or touch or feel, but we know that they exist. The Gemara didn't have the terminology for it. Perhaps. I'm not saying, and I'm certainly not the one in a position to say which of all of the views are correct, whether the Rambam is correct, whether Rav Aaron Soloveitchik is correct, whether all the other posts that deal with it are correct. There are a lot of fascinating responsa that deal with different types of behavior that was anticipated or given over to an activity by an angel or by a shade, good, bad, or indifferent. Things influence people to do certain things. So what's the expression that something made me do it? Something in your head made you do it. Something you felt made you behave a certain way. They didn't have the terminology, so they called it evil spirits. You say it every Friday night. And we say, what is a ruach ra'ah that we talk about? A ruach ra'ah. A bad and a ruach, spirit. I mean, that could be a shade, or that could be an illness or a psychosis or some other type of psychological issue. So in the world of angels and the world of demons, they're out there. We can't see it. We can't touch it. We don't always know how to refer to it by what name or what title. Avraham saw malachim. Lot saw malachim. Throughout Tanakh, people encounter malachim. You also encounter evil forces out there. Do we give it a name? I can only suggest, if you are interested, the basic reader would be the Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim. Or, if you don't want to go to the philosophical realm and stick in the halachic realm, look at the Rambam Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, where he tries to describe malachim and God's essence. And if you're interested, if you can follow that and you want to pursue it more, then I would suggest you take a look at Moreh Nevuchim. It's a fascinating book that, as I say, it was burned in France, but and it's a chayrim put on reading it. But today, it's available in English, University of Chicago Press. It's a wonderful edition. If you want to engage in something beyond the normal type of reading that will challenge you, perhaps shake you up and make you ask certain questions, but I think that's a healthy thing. Okay.
Wally.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a famous comedian named Flip Wilson, whose one of his famous lines were, "The devil made me do it."
The devil made me do it. That's right.
That was his famous. For those of us who remember him, especially on Ed Sullivan, right? The devil made me do it.
I remember him well.
We remember it.
But yeah, I mean, there are things in life that we cannot touch, see, or feel, but that have an impact on us and make us do certain things. You know, the devil made me do it, meaning my Yetzer. What is Yetzer Hara? What is Yetzer HaTov? Is it just how you feel about doing something? What is the evil influence? What is it? Can you touch it or feel it? Some will say no, some will say yes. The machlokas is ongoing. This type of discussion will never take place in a base medrash because it's irrelevant in most discussions of halacha.
Wally,
Yes.
So if the devil made me do it, or a shade made me do it, then I'm relieved of responsibility. How can I be punished for my sins?
The only time that particular question comes up, as I said, is if a woman claims to have been raped by a shade or had an affair with a shade. She can continue living with her husband because obviously the woman is somehow mentally imbalanced, perhaps. But in terms of any other normative Jewish behavior, that excuse is not acceptable. And people can try to say it. Again, when a person sins, his Yetzer Hara is guilty. Your evil inclination. Now, does that evil inclination have a personification? Or is it just something within you? If it's within you, then you bear the responsibility. If there's a physical presence that made you do something, then make an appointment with your therapist. Anything else? And if anybody sees a shade or a malach, good luck. It's a fascinating topic that doesn't get enough attention, but for very good reason, because there's no hard and fast. When you're dealing with things that are not concrete, there are no hard and fast answers, and that's why it's called speculation, philosophical speculation. The questions are very often better than the answers, but it's a little introduction to the world of Malachim and Shadim. If you want to pursue it further, I suggest, as I say, Mor Nevuchim or Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah. Good place to start. Any other questions? Yes.
By the Yom Kippur War, there were many, many stories of soldiers who ran out of ammunition or water, and somebody came and gave it to them and then just disappeared.
Okay. I will not argue that point. I'm sure many times, many things have happened throughout history that are unexplained, that people came in to do certain things. When we talked about the other week, we talked about the Golem of Prague doing certain things. Was the Golem perhaps an angel in disguise? These questions are not necessarily easily answered. But many times, not only during the Yom Kippur War, during the Holocaust, many miraculous events took place. And people will swear it was an angel that helped save a person's life. That a person was trying to escape from a concentration camp, and the Nazi guard was about to turn around, and something caught his attention. And the person was able to escape. What was that something that caught his attention? Could that have been a malach distracting him? The person who escaped will swear it was a malach. So these are things that cannot be concretized. Very hard to define it. They exist. It's just that we don't always, there are things, gravity exists, but we can't see it. We know it exists because you drop something, it falls, right? An angel, the difference between an angel and gravity is not an intelligent force at work in the universe. Whereas a malach is an intelligent force at work in the universe, directed by God. So if you understand, if you can understand gravity, you can understand a malach, or a shade for that matter. There are forces at work that we just can't touch. We know they're there, we just can't see it or touch it. Before they invented the germ theory, right? Before we knew what germs were, people got sick. Why? How? Shadim, malachim. And in fact, many the Black Death was responsible. The shadim were responsible for it. But they didn't understand how germs went from one person to another. They didn't understand that. We still don't understand how Malachim and Shadim work, but they're out there. There are forces at work in the universe that we can't see or touch or feel, but we know they're there. And it affects us every single day. Anybody else? It's a fascinating peek behind the curtain.
No.
Okay, I hope you have something to think about. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Wally. Have a great Shabbos.
Take care.
Good Shabbos.